Hello and welcome to a preparation video for C3 Halblins on the Hill. This is the third in the consortium series of adventures designed to be run as standalone or even scavenged for individual encounters. Kind of the theme or lack of theme of my consortium series is that each one is an adventure in a series, but there's no overarching story. The thread time together essentially is the PCs going on adventures. This is designed for a party of characters, 3 to 6 of them. The group I'm currently playing in has, I think, 7, making balance kind of difficult, but it can be done. And the character levels intended for this are 1st to 3rd, and it's the 3rd in the series, but again, it stands on its own. So, a bit of the background and history, the reason why there's a dungeon here, and one thing whenever I have a dungeon, I always like to give a reason why it's there. In this case, it's Kelson the Mad Prophet. And Kelson dates back to my original D&D campaign back in the 80s, and so I'm kind of recycling. Thought it's an interesting, character. So while clerics of all the classes are the most prone to prophetic visions, these visions are not unknown among arcane casters because they're tied into magic stuff. One great mage, now known as Kelson the Mad Prophet as well, had visions of what he interpreted to be a world-consuming cataclysm. This vision unhinged his already unstable mind. Fortunately, though, he's a fairly benevolent guy, and his madness became a benevolent madness. So he set out, in his kind of very strange way, to mitigate the horrors of this future. So to do this, he collected and created various magic items intended to aid the survivors, to make sure they wouldn't fall into the wrong hands, or any hands too easily. He saw to it that they were both hidden and guarded. Now, being mad, he devised odd and dangerous ways to protect these items. One of the more extreme tales tell about how he created an entire tower, filled it with treasure and guardians, and then shifted it off to another plane. And while some skeptics have scoffed at this story that a wizard could do such a thing, it's obviously unwise to underestimate the power and eccentricities of a mage as great and mad as Kelson. Now, he wanted the survivors of this cataclysm to be able to find and acquire these items, but again, not too easy. So he left behind clues that he thought would be pretty obvious to anyone who's like a super intelligent, mad wizard. Some of the clues have been found over the years, but most of them proved utterly incomprehensible. What was obvious to Kelson and his, super genius madness, not so obvious to other beings. And even now, centuries after Kelson is believed to have died or gone away or done something else, most of his hidden dungeons and treasures remain still hidden. Now, as there's been numerous cataclysmic events since the time of Kelson, scholars are not sure what event, if any, he actually foresaw. Some argue it could have been any of the events that occurred, maybe none of them. Others claim that the predicted cataclysm is yet to come. He saw a future yet to be, which is kind of how futures work. And there are even those rare few who claim that the world already ended, and this is now a new one. But whatever the case, there's still lots of strange places with strange guardians and lots of treasure. So in addition to his creating these magical items to stash away, he also stashed away mundane items that would be useful to the survivors as he saw it, as well as books and knowledge he thought preserving. One relatively minor cache was entrusted to a tribe of fey goblins. For some unexplained reason, Kelson also gave the goblins domesticated spiders, and following a logic only Kelson seemed to understand, he created fog-spewing beetles, giant flying spiders, and strange plants with jawbone-like cutting surfaces and tendrils. And he placed them in the area around his dungeon, kind of binding them magically so they would guard the area. To his mind, this all seemed eminently rational and sensible. He explained it to his friends, and they had no idea why he was doing this, but it made perfect sense to him. Kelson taught the goblins a ritual they would need to complete each year before the light of the moon shined down upon the entrance to the dungeon. This ritual or Kelson told the goblins, prevents the moonlight from disintegrating the massive stone plug sealing the entrance. The goblins agreed to this to protect it, and the goblins and Kelson's creations have guarded the dungeon ever since. But as always, things get complicated. So now we go from Kelson the Mad and some goblins off to the Iron Blades. So in my campaign worlds, the Iron Blades are a group of human supremacists. They arose among the followers of another prophet, a benevolent prophet named Kamosh, who foresaw a disaster that came to pass, the collapse of an empire, and he led people from the failing cities out into the wilds to survive. And he was successful. The tribes of Kamosh endure to this day, at least in my campaign world. Maybe not doing so good in other worlds. So although Kamosh accepted anybody who heeded his call, and the 7 tribes of Kamosh largely accepted his view of tolerance because they wanted to survive. And being, intolerant and a supremacist, not great survival traits. Now, among the people in the tribes, long after Kamosh vanished or perished, always hard to tell with prophets. Do they die? Do they vanish? What happens? And all depends on your campaign. So a clever mind and a cursed heart were two of the things that this human, Sanparo, possessed. He spent his entire lifetime as a scholar writing on the superiority of humans over what he regarded as the lesser races. He refined them, to be ever more persuasive, ever more hateful. In his own time, he had very little success. And then decades later, a human bard, a very charismatic, named Tella, she presented a much more simplified version of his teachings and used her bardic abilities to make up for, in persuasion, what the teachings lacked in logic. She pushed Samparo's metaphor that humans are like iron blades and the lesser races are like bronze blades by saying that the human superiority is both evident and cutting. And so when she started gathering her followers, she decided to call them the Iron Blades. And her faction, her sect, was dedicated that, first, humans are superior to all the races, and secondly, humans must be kept pure to remain strong. So the usual, racism stuff. Now, this being a fantasy world, there was of course debate among the the scholars of the Iron Blades about Azamars who were human, partially human, and tieflings, also partially human. They're not pure humans, of course, and they're not mixed with other mortal races. They're mixed with celestial or fiendish, beings. So Iron Blades who don't know the full story about Iron Blade ideology, or who wrongly believe that Iron Blade ideology is good, tend to think that Azamar are acceptable because they're human plus, celestials, that they're closer to the angels. They also tend to dislike tieflings because tieflings are seen as humans but corrupted. Now, the inner circles of the Iron Blades, and of course, like most hate groups, it has various levels of duplicity, with the actual views being at the inner core. The members of the inner circles, they have a very strict view of human racial purity. So Azamar are impure humans, and tieflings are even worse. Now, the Iron Blades advocate for slavery, not surprisingly, but being human supremacist, they believe that slavery is to be reserved for non-humans. And while they hate most non-humans, they especially hate what they call half-orcs, regarding them as worse than orcs because they are seen as polluted humans. So human plus orc, they see as worse than orc. They're willing to tolerate, to an extent, elves, dwarves, gnomes, and halflings because they've usually been seen as the friends of humanity, and they call them the demi-humans. And as long as they, in the words of the Iron Blades, know their place, they're accepted. Half-elves, they don't hate them as much as half-orcs, but they're still seen as, problematic because they are contaminations of human purity. Now, unfortunately for the multiverse, the Iron Blades even have a presence in Sigil, the City of Doors. the Ironblades actually claim that the city was built by humans and all its gates were constructed by humans. And they even claim that there was once a vast empire of humans across all the possible worlds of the universe. And they explain, because the obvious question is, if that was the case, why don't humans rule everywhere? I mean, humans are very widespread across multiverse realities, but why don't humans still have this rule? Well, as their explanation, they came up with this hypothesis they call the dire displacement. Not being displaced by dire creatures, dire beasts. For those who played early editions, they had like dire everything. So you just like slap dire and it became, seemingly got like spikes and stuff and got much more dangerous. So in the dire displacement, the theory is that humans were pushed out of their rightful place by treachery and betrayal. As proof, they point to the claim that humans were the original inhabitants of the world of Sigil, or the City of Doors, and that humans once again are spread throughout the multiverse. Now, even among other humans, this is seen as unconvincing, that everything was once controlled by humans. Although many humans are pretty ambitious, and they sometimes say, well, it wasn't originally controlled by humans, but soon, someday soon. So the Ironblades are very effective at their use of the evil onion or doctrine in depth approach. They have depths and layers of doctrines, with the benign ones that seem appealing, or at least innocent, on the surface, concealing the deeper, rotten ones. So on the surface, the Ironblades present themselves as benevolent, concerned only with protecting humans from injustice. They also insist they are peacefully spreading and preserving human culture and traditions. So they're just, good guys, according to them. Beneath the surface, each layer is, gets increasingly awful. And at the core of it being their view of human supremacy and the desire to subjugate or even exterminate all non-humans. As members join the organization or groups, they're tested to see how far they can go. Some, find their depth and stop before getting all the way to, the greatest depths. And others, who know too much but reject it, tend to be eliminated, not surprisingly. Now, among the Ironblades, there are three main divisions. Not official, though, but these are essentially sort of philosophical differences. The first can be called the Destroyers. They use the Ironblade ideology as a justification for the destruction they would otherwise do. So they want to do all this terrible stuff anyways, and they're kind of looking for a reason, a rationale. And they hit on, this doctrine of human supremacy. They're also the imperialist. They're sincere in their beliefs, and they wish to, as they see it, restore the great and glorious human empire they believe, sincerely in many cases, was stolen from humans. The third group are the grifters. They don't care about the ideology pretty much at all. They're only concerned with their own profit. And they see the Ironblades as very useful for this, for their grift. And so, again, these aren't official. It's not like they have like a, not like this a group of Ironblades are like a, hey, we're the grifters, and hey, we're the imperialists. But those are the three main psychological differences. Those who are there to destroy anyways, and it's a convenient ideology for them to grab onto, the true believers and the grifters. Now, so how does this human supremacy tie into these goblins and these strange Halbins? Well, here's the connection. So there was a scholar, halfling scholar, named Gilbo Proudtoe. And he failed as a scholar, was attempting to go to various universities and get a position, and kept failing. And he came across the works of Semparo and Tella and found them very appealing. And subconsciously, looking for something to justify why he was rejected by these schools, he developed the theory that halflings are actually the original true humans. The others that are called humans by others are, on his view, are a degenerate, stretched version of the true human. The true human form is, of course, the halfling. As evidence, Proudtoe presents in his writings examples of various giant versions of beasts, arguing that humans are but a magically enlarged and corrupted version of halflings. albeit, of course, still superior to the lesser races. Proto, of course, using his logic such as it is, argued that the giants, ogres, even hill giants, especially cloud giants, storm giants, etc., are the most corrupted versions of humans. And to support this, he points to ogres, trolls, and hill giants. Look how terrible these things are. They're big, so they're terrible because they're big. Because they're once human, but now they're big monsters. Now, his critics, of course, brought up the obvious counter of things like storm giants and cloud giants. Storm giants, super impressive. Proto simply ignores this, of course, because it would disprove his big degenerate hypothesis, so he just ignores it. And then, of course, he died eventually. Now, like the Iron Blades, Proto also embraced human supremacy and condemned any interspecies reproduction. His theory was, however, more accepting of demi-humans, especially dwarfs and gnomes, because of their height. Smaller is better. They were, of course, still considered inferior to the halflings. He insisted that halflings be called humans, and humans be called doublings. Now, fortunately, for everyone, Proto's views never found much traction, and the real Iron Blades considered his views heretical at best, although they did admire his commitment to speciesism, so they did respect his racism. So now we at long last get to the Halblins. So long after the goblins, back to the goblins, agreed to guard the dungeon, a band of halflings arrived there fleeing disasters. Preparing to fight for their lives, the halflings were pleased to find that the goblins were friendly, at least once they got to know the halflings had no bad intentions. The halflings settled down in the area, and over the centuries intermarried with the goblins, giving rise to a tribe of halfling goblins called Halblins. The Halblins continued to guard the dungeon and perform the moon ritual each year. A few years before the start of this adventure, the Halblin Sippin Green found a partial copy of the work of Proto, and Proto's words inspired Sippin. Believing himself called to action, Sippin wanted to seize the treasure in the dungeon and use it to enrich himself and fund a new human supremacy movement. When Sippin tried to disrupt the ritual and wounded those who tried to stop him, he was defeated and exiled. After traveling to a city, Sippin was horrified to learn that he was not a pure halfling. After contemplating destroying himself to eradicate the corruption, he decided that instead he would become the most dedicated human supremacist and set out on a campaign of theft and grifting to secure funds. Along the way, he stole a magical pipe, allowed him to cast disguised self on himself, and immediately used it to appear as a handsome halfling, and now he has rationalized himself into sincerely believing the illusion is his real appearance. He doesn't even realize it when he casts it now. While he's been able to secure some wealth, he craves the treasure he believes his former people are guarding, and of course he wants revenge. And this is what gets the PCs into the adventure. So, having acquired enough gold through theft and grift, he's worked out a plan to get that treasure. He will go and get a group of adventurers to do some murdering for him, and what he'll do is go to the Guild of Adventurers, of course, and present it in a deceitful manner by claiming there's a band of spider-riding goblins, and they're going to be conducting a terrible ritual within the week. The purpose of the ritual, he claims, is to release an imprisoned evil. Sippin will offer a reward of 100 gold pieces for this, and to destroy the spider riders before they can complete the ritual. And this can be adjusted based on your campaign economics. If you have super inflated campaign, it would be more. If you're really strict with the gold, then of course less. He will tell them that there's a town within, the job specifies as a town within a couple of days of the site, and Sippin in his job description says he'll meet, if the PC's accepted, meet them there. If the PCs ask the guild about information about this, they'll say they only know what's posted in the actual job, and then of course they'll you know, tell the PCs to always be cautious. If the PCs ask for more gold, they can of course negotiate with Sippin, but he only has so many funds. So ideally, the PCs will accept the job and agree to go deal with these spider-riding goblins. So the likely order of events are these. The first one is meeting Sippin. They'll meet him before going to the adventure, and they'll have a chance to talk with him. The next part will be once they accept the job and they go to the village, the town, by teleportation. They'll head out into the woods, and they'll have to fight through the guardians, these beetles, spiders, and plants. Then they'll have to fight the way up the hill or talk the way up the hill. And at the top of the hill, they'll encounter the chief, who happens, of course, to be Sippin's sister, and those other Halbin conducting the ritual. So when the PCs meet Sippin, he'll be happy, very, very happy to see other halflings, and will cautiously test their interest in halfling supremacy. And if they seem interested, he'll want to meet with them in the future, in secret, in private, to discuss the cause. He'll be friendly towards humans in the group, being somewhat pitying of them because they're doubles, and he'll be tolerant of any dwarfs, gnomes, or elves. He'll be civil with any other species in the PC's group, but a DC 15 Wisdom Insight check reveal that he's concealing disdain. If he is questioned or challenged on this, he'll apologize and say that he's had difficulties with certain creatures with whom he is sure the PCs are nothing like. If he needs the PCs and doesn't have time to recruit another party, and so he'll be on his best behavior. Sippin will explain the mission to them, that he'll claim falsely that they're going to go defeat this band of evil goblins who are riding spiders, and the PCs can have a chance to sort this out. If the PCs really press them, he might, and they make a successful check, he might reveal that they are Halblins, that they're a hybrid of goblin and halfling. And he will say truthfully that he's ashamed and embarrassed by their existence. If they press him about the ritual, he'll say he doesn't entirely know what the ritual does, which is technically true. And if they really push him, they might find out that he's concealing stuff. Now, he will warn the PCs truthfully that there's dangers on the way. Dangers, plants, and beasts. He grew up there, so he knows the dangers. And they'll have to fight their way through them. Sippin will have with him 4 guards to protect him, and 10 workers. He think he's hired them to recover the treasure. If the PCs ask about the workers, he'll say that he'll make up some plausible story about how he wants to dismantle the ritual site so that it can never be done again after they defeat the goblins, or so he'll claim. So he'll offer the PCs the payment, and he'll once agree to this, and the group will go to the teleportation place and in the guild, because kind of the gimmick is that the guild has access to or control of a network of teleportation later on for hard load ventures, for planar travel, and they'll be able to go to various places. And so the plan is, they go to the teleportation arc, and boom, they go to the town. Now, Sippin, he'll say the adventurers, his guards are there to protect him and his workers, and he'll stay a safe distance, a few hours behind the PCs, because their objective is to fight their way, up to the hill, and he'll be coming behind them so that he can safely, and see the PC's success. So the characters, NPCs, here's Sippin Proudtoe's stats. PC's decent chance to end up fighting him. He's essentially kind of a rogue-like character. He's lucky. He's got a nimble escape ability, kind of like a goblin. He's also brave, and he can do some sneak attacking. He has the Pipe of Puffin, which allows him to disguise himself, and he generally prefers not to get involved in violence against himself, but is happy to use violence against others. He has hired guards, standard guards, They are essentially hired mercenaries. They're loyal to their pay and are not particularly interested in getting in a showdown with adventurers. The workers are just commoners getting paid. They're also not interested in getting in fights with anybody. There's a horse, that he brings along to help dice up. The horses are also not interested in fighting anybody. So the trip to the hill will take about 2 days, assuming the PCs go directly towards the hill. And the planned encounters are first the Jawbone Blossoms, and these were made by Kelson to provide a danger. And they're essentially plants that can move around a little bit, and they have these slashing blades. And so the encounter by default will be with 4 of these Jawbone Blossoms. Perhaps when the PCs, are settling down to rest, they can rest close to one of them and they can start slashing at them. The next encounter are Fog Beetles, and these beetles, they are within a mound, and there's a stone in the area, like with the previous area, that was created by Kelson to sort of bind his creations here, to incline them to stay. They feel uncomfortable moving away from the stone and feel more comfortable near it. So the Fog Beetles are pretty much what they sound like. They're a medium-sized beetle in terms of not in terms of beetle sizes, but of course in terms of D&D sizes. They're bitey, and kind of their deal based on their name is they exude a fog. And they've developed a form of blind sight, essentially effectively like a bat-like sonar, and they also, of course, rely on their sense of smell, etc., to locate their prey or enemies within this fog. And so this could provide an interesting fight for the PCs with basically beetles that can cast fog cloud and see through it. And this could go badly for the PCs if they're not able to deal with it well, because they could be, if you have these beetles and poof, they fog cloud them and rush in and get attacks with advantage, they could chew at the party pretty quickly. So could be a dangerous encounter depending on your party. Anytime someone's got an advantage, like pack tactics, etc., at low level, that can go bad. And of course, there are flying spiders. Kelson also made spiders that can fly, and the default is with 4 spiders. So the spiders being able to fly, they typically use their flight to launch a quick strike against a target, and then zip down, attack, and then if things don't go well, boom, zip away, assuming they survive. Although they have flying, they don't have any real ranged attacks, so their flying shouldn't present a huge threat to the players. It's mostly that they can use the terrain to their advantage by flying from tree to tree, striking quickly, and then moving away. That shouldn't be too bad of a fight. At last, the PCs will reach the hill, and if there, they'll encounter some of the Halbin at first. Now, Sippin, of course, will spend his time trying to convince the PCs that the Halblin are bad and evil and are up to terrible things, and he'll try to encourage them not to talk to the Halblin. And it's, of course, up to the PCs. So their first encounter with the Halblin will be with some of the guards. And the Halblins are halfling goblins or goblin halflings, and they're neutral. Individual ones can, of course, be good or evil, but in general, they tend towards neutrality. They have nimble escape, which can be useful. They can strike and run away. They're also lucky, which is a very useful ability, and of course, brave. They fight with short swords, short bows, and slings, and they ride spiders because Kelson gave them some spiders. And the riding spiders are medium-sized beasts. The Halblins are small, so they can ride around on them. And they basically are spider cavalry. They'll use the climb speed of their riding spiders, to make strikes, get it from places, or climb up a tree and just bombard the PCs with slings and arrows, perhaps of outrageous fate. The spiders are essentially like riding horses for the Halblin, and have a similar degree of loyalty, etc. They're relatively smart. They're magical creations. They have 3 intelligence. They don't understand languages, but are, pretty capable. Now, once the PCs get to the top of the hill, there they will encounter the site of the ritual. This is the stone plug that Kelson created through magic, and then there's 4 stones around it. Now, the Halblin, when they first encounter them, the Halblin will be wary of the PCs, but will try, unless the PCs simply start blasting, they'll want to talk to them. Again, Sippin will try to convince them the PCs to just attack on sight, claiming that they're duplicitous, but it's up to the PCs how that goes. So the PCs attack, the Halblin will fight, and the PCs talk, the Halblin will try to talk. When Sippin shows up, he'll try to get the fighting going. So once the PCs reach the top of the hill, either through murdering the Halblins or talking with them to see to reach the site, then they'll face off against the healers who are conducting the ritual to maintain the stone plug, and the chief of the Halblins, Chief Theragreen, who is Sippin's sister. So the chief is the healers are Halblins with healing abilities. Essentially, they're casters. Basically, they're relatively first level casters, so they're equivalent to alkalites. They do have some spells though. They do have the ability to cast some bless, which they'll use if fighting ensues, have cure wounds and healing word. And then for fighting, they'll use primarily Sacred Flame, just to keep their distance, trying to Sacred Flame their enemies, and supporting each other and the chief. The chief is, like her brother, kind of a rogue-like NPC. She has a sneak attack, and of course she has the usual Halblin abilities of nimble escape and lucky. Now, she knows the ritual is important because her people have been doing this for centuries, and she will fight to keep the PCs from disrupting it. And again, there could be, depending on whether your PC is roleplay or not, there could be kind of an interesting discussion or interesting arguments where Sippin tries to get the PCs to murder her, and she tries to get the PCs to not do that. Her spider is Webby Webster, a large spider who is bitey. He's got a web ability and can climb. So he's pretty tough. So how can things play out? Well, it depends on what the PCs do. So if the PCs defeat the Halblin, prevent the ritual, Sippin will of course be ecstatic and pay the PCs. He'll then say that they can depart now because evil has been defeated once again. If the PCs leave, he and his guards will wait for the opening of the dungeon, and it will open when the moon shines upon it without the ritual occurring. The stone plug dissolves, opening up the dungeon. Sippin and his hirelings will then enter the dungeon, and then he and most of them will be killed. The survivors will flee back to town, and this will lead the PCs into the next adventure. Now, if the PCs insist on staying, Sippin will try to persuade them to leave, even departing with them if he thinks that will work. He doesn't want them there because he wants them to think they defeated a great evil, blah, blah, blah. If the PCs refuse and he thinks he can take them, he will consider using violence against them. If he thinks he can't defeat them, which should be the case, he shouldn't be able to take them on, or if he's unable to get him to leave, he'll just stay with him. And when the plug dissolves and the moon shines upon it, he'll pretend to be surprised and make a great show of preparing to fight the evil. When it is clear that no evil is emerging, Sippin will work out a plan to get the PCs to assist him in claiming the treasure of the dungeon. He'll most likely offer to hire them for this job, once again, offering them a cut. And so this dungeon is detailed next in the series. This is one case where the adventures do connect together in C4, Dungeon Under Halblin Hill. And so no matter how it ends up, PCs kill the Halblin, then Sippin will be there and they'll begin the dungeon. Also, in the next adventure in the series, C4, it explains how if the PCs didn't kill the Halblin, how they'll still be able to get into the dungeon. The dungeon also includes a magic item, the Pipe of Puffing, which allows essentially one to cast Disguise Self at will. And fog cloud while smoking the pipe essentially once per day. The Halblin are included if as a potential PC race or ancestry or whatever term one is using now, whatever you're using in your game, and you can pick their kind of unique feature is they can pick 3 traits from the following options from Fey Ancestry, Fear of the Small, Nimble Escape, Brave, and Luck. Essentially, they can pick between the Goblin and Halfling traits. And so that's the adventure Halbins on the Hill. Next one in the series, already completed, which is C4, Dungeon Under the Hill, under Halblin Hill. And then I've already finished C5, which is Moonlight Dungeon, or Desert Moon Dungeon. And then the next in the series I'm working on right now is the C6, which is Lost River. So stay safe, and I'll see you in the future.